All right, let's get our Facebook folks in here. Did I already click one? What's going on? Oh, I guess I didn't hit the Twitter one. Oopsie. That's okay. Maybe it didn't go for some reason. We're getting in now. Twitter folks, there we go. Boom and boom. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. It is draft day, draft eve for Broncos country. But hey, the draft's here. We're going to find out a lot of stuff. We're going to see who's available day two. It's Broncos for breakfast Thursday morning. I am Nick Kendell and joined by, as always, Scott Kennedy. Scott, good morning to you. How are you doing? What's new? What's shaking? Are you ready for the Falcons tonight to trade up and take Bijan Robinson?
Absolutely. I'm number one overall, best player in the draft. You absolutely trade up to the top 3 to make sure you get the guy you want. So if they want Bijan Robinson at running back, trade up, man. Next year, who needed F them picks?
Yeah, I mean, heck, maybe even trade Desmond Ridder, just full running back offense. Tyler Algier, Bijan in the backfield will be fun.
I'm sure one of those guys has played some quarterback in the past, some option. We'll go full bone.
I got it. You draft Bijan, and then you take Roshan Johnson because he was a quarterback as well, and then you run the split backfield.
There you go. You got it. You figured it out.
Figured it out. Your third eye is open. Well, guys, enough of teasing around here. We're going to be talking a little bit of Broncos today. I wrote an article. I know we talked about this kind of recently, but I actually just recently, yesterday, published an article about my top trade-up candidates. There's a lot of guys, obviously, but I want to talk about 4 specifically for the Broncos that I think make a lot of sense. There's some buzz about them. We'll see if they're even close to being in range. Probably because I wrote about them like, oh, I like these guys. They stand out a little bit. Well, then they go like, picks 20 to 40 and they're never even a chance. But what's new, Scott? Are you excited for tonight? We're going to be on Scott. Here, I'll give you the pitch. What's going on tonight for us?
Yeah. So welcome to Broncos for breakfast. Thank you everybody for being here this morning. Hit the like on Facebook as it's starting to open up. That opens it up for more people. I only see 2 so far. I see you in there watching. So make sure you're hitting that like. But Nick and I will be here for the next hour. We're going to run through some final mock drafts before the first round starts. And then tonight, Nick and I will be on my channel, which is youtube.com/Scott Kennedy, to talk the top 10. And then Nick will come over to Mile High Huddle. That said, this channel will be live also during the draft. But since the Broncos don't have a pick, Nick and I are going to go over and talk everybody else at the same time. So you've got your choice. Where you can listen to us talk everybody else, or I think Eric is going to be hosting, and maybe Chad and Zach to get started tonight. I'm not sure, but there will be your choice of Mile High Huddle, or me and Nick for the draft tonight at 8:00 Eastern.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. I'm really excited to see how it all plays out. This is probably one of the more erratic, unknown drafts for a bit. I mean, so many scenarios with those top picks, a lot of intrigue with the quarterbacks, what happens with, obviously, Jalen Carter. It's going to be a lot of fun. How do those cornerbacks shake out in this class? When did the wide receiver run start? When does the tackle run start? I'm sure Broncos country is still curious about that. We're going to see how many running backs in the first round, centers. I mean, God, just so much intrigue here for the draft, even though the Broncos don't have a first pick, stuff that's going to matter to them. And Ernie Mays, cover your ears, cover your eyes, see no evil, speak no evil, right? But we're going to also run a mock draft as not only the Broncos today, but we're going to do a first round mock as the AFC West rivals. Just kind of see how the board is here, talk about how these teams make some sense as well. But first, we got our guy coming in with, I'm sure with the like first, but also the stars. Michael Ronquillo, the superstar. Good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em. Buck you too, Michael. We always appreciate you. Hope you're doing well out there in Tucson. We'll see. I mean, God, one of the most interesting teams in the draft this year is out there in Arizona in the Cardinals. No way in hell they stay at 3. I know that Kyler says he wants Paris Johnson Jr. I don't give a hoot what Kyler wants. Maybe watch some of your own tape rather than telling me to draft an offensive tackle. Granted, if they'd listened to him a couple drafts ago, they'd have taken Tristan Wirfs, and that would looked pretty good. But I digress.
Yeah, and he's got, what's interesting is Daniel Jeremiah's got the Texans trading up to get 2 and 3, and then Arizona comes back down and still gets Paris Johnson Jr. with the Houston Texans' original pick. So
12.
You asked me at the beginning, am I looking forward to this? Absolutely. This is as intriguing a draft as I can remember. I feel like the hyperbole is thick, but in 2021, we said this is one of the better top 10s that we've seen in a long time. It was one of those drafts where the guys that were taken in the position players have pretty much all been hits. When you look back and you say, okay, we got Micah Parsons and Pat Surtain and Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. I believe all those guys were in that draft. Penny Sewell, all top 15 type of guys. You're like, yeah, that was fun. Those were good players.
Yeah.
This one, the intrigue is more, who are they going to take? I don't know if you've got the same impact of player in the top 10 to 12, which has led to some intrigue with some questions of players that have just phenomenal ability, but have question marks. Everybody's got a red flag next to him. I feel like it's kind of like recruiting junior college players this year. I always said everybody is at a junior college. Every junior college player has a red flag. What is it? And can you live with it? That's how it is, like recruiting junior colleges. Everybody has a red flag. I feel like that this year. Everybody. Even if it's Bijan Robinson, he's a running back. That's his red flag. Sorry, you play the wrong position. Bryce Young, you're short. You're small. Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. You know, if you're a good hitter, why didn't you hit good? You know, they didn't have the NFL type of production and accuracy that you'd like to see for a top 10 quarterback. Jalen Carter, we know. Will Anderson, he's light. He's small. Tyree Wilson, he hasn't been overly productive and, you know, has maybe a foot injury scare. All good things, man. Yes, I'm excited.
Yeah, it will be great. We got David Yokin coming in here saying, "Morning Broncos country. Does anyone think we trade a wide receiver or two to move up in the first and second round?" And Albert Knopper says, "Do you think Judy or Sutton are getting traded?" I think that the trades are still very much on the table for the Broncos. I'd probably put it at 15% chance of it actually happening, but Broncos are looking to make some deals and add some picks and give themselves some maneuverability in the draft, move up, get more picks, you know, round 4 through 7 as well. So we'll see. The Broncos are, I would put the over under at Broncos players traded at 1.5, and I might take the under on that, but I would be shocked if there was 0 players traded throughout the course of the draft.
Yeah, the answer for me on this one, Nick put a percentage on it to hedge him. My thought was, do you think it'll happen? I think no. I don't think so. I think if they were going to be traded, they already would have. But that said, you work on those deals for months, and as the draft starts, you're doing it for draft picks. So as the draft comes along, people start getting a little more antsy. It's deadline day now. It's deadline day. That's when deals get done. So my gut feeling is no, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the Denver Broncos.
Yep.
But we'll see. We'll see.
It'll be interesting. And the one you want to watch out for here is Jackson Smith and Jigba. There's a lot of teams in that like 13 to 20 range that have been linked to wide receiver, specifically Jackson Smith and Jigba. And Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think his skill set translates pretty similarly to Jerry Jeudy. And if you like Jackson Smith and Jigba, maybe you want to trade around 2 round 2 picks or a 2 and a 3 this year for somebody like Jerry Jeudy. There's not a lot of X receivers in this draft. Maybe somebody misses out on Mingo / Cedric Tillman round 2, and they're like, oh my God, we really need an X for this offense to function. Maybe you give the Broncos a 3 and a 5 for Cortland Sutton. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think another domino that we're waiting on is DeAndre Hopkins. There's been a lot of movement on that over the last 48 hours, at least a lot of buzz, not movement yet. But once that one happens, then maybe the floodgates open for these veteran wide receiver trades. But interesting, man. The Broncos aren't drafting today, probably. But things can change, and it'll be a lot of stuff that'll happen today will have a big impact on what does happen to the Broncos. Gary Palmer having a big impact on us today, knocking us out of the park with a 1999 super. Thank you so much. Notorious GLP says, good morning, Nick and Scott. Excited for the draft. Bijan or Jalen? Broncos fans would love that dilemma. Go Broncos. If the Broncos were 5th overall, I'd probably be pounding the table for a quarterback there because, and you guys would probably be annoyed, I have no issue taking the risk on athletic freaks if they have the upside. So I'd probably want Anthony Richardson there because I want a demigod quarterback out there to compete with the Mahomeses and the Josh Allens of the world. But if not, then we'd be talking, Carter, Anderson, Tyree Wilson, which would be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, if you were sitting at 5, who would be your best pick? Who would you want?
Probably Anthony Richardson, because we probably wouldn't have a quarterback if that was the case. We wouldn't have. If we had 5, that means we didn't trade for Russell Wilson. Maybe it's another year of Drew Lock or something. Right. So,
well, and you might do that anyway.
Yeah,
you might take a quarterback anyway, even if you did have Russell Wilson.
Especially,
let's say it was just last year's number 1, and you were on the clock this year. Yep. Are you taking a quarterback right now?
And we know how much Sean Payton loved Taysom Hill. Well, why not have a super athletic, supersized, better arm talent, better perceived upside passer, Anthony Richardson, who apparently scored really well. And I've also heard that Anthony Richardson's interview with the Carolina Panthers gave them pause because he was that impressive to them. Now, that could be back-end agent talk. Who knows? But I probably would be saying Anthony Richardson because I have a type and I know what I like.
I think that makes sense. And if you're going to give him to anybody, Sean Payton is a good place to go, for a developmental quarterback. And for the same reason, I think it makes at least with a smaller track record, It makes sense for the Colts with Shane Steichen.
Yes.
Shane Steichen has had some success with young quarterbacks, old quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks, immobile quarterbacks, and he has been a good quarterback coach.
And I was listening to the Athletic Football Show. They do a lot of good work out there. Shout out to the Athletic. And I think it was Robert Mays mentioned that in the last decade, there's been a change in consensus from NFL teams that used to be the old cliche that quarterbacks' accuracy can't improve. Actually, a lot of teams have changed their opinion that accuracy can be improved over time with mechanics and everything and just fitting the scheme to them a little bit better. The one thing they say that cannot be improved
Arm strength.
arm strength is one, but more of a not an intangible, but something that's similar to accuracy is your ability to process information and play within the pocket, understanding the space in the pocket. And that's one of the things where, like, you see they're contextualizing it around CJ Stroud in that S2 test. The processing, it's not as much the reading the field, it's reading where the space is around you while reading the field and being able to manipulate that pocket, which is something that he didn't have to do too much at Ohio State with that the type of weapons he had. So
in soccer, they call it taking pictures. So it's like as soon I'm a midfielder and I'm surrounded by 20 players. As soon as the ball arrives, you're watching the ball. You kind of got an idea, and they say you've already taken the picture of everything around you. You already know the best players already know what their next 5 moves could possibly be because they've already taken the picture in their head.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
And just real quick to put a bow on it, I think Anthony Richardson is really good actually within the pocket, like understanding the movement. He's not one of those guys who, just because he's an athlete, gets sacked constantly. He had a really good pressure to sack rate, which you don't see from a scrambling quarterback. So I like Richardson. I'm just going to say it. Jeremy Sean, morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Jeremy. Good morning. Appreciate you being here as well and joining us on both shows this morning. Keith asked, do you think we draft a position that surprises most Broncos fans? What position would surprise you? Quarterback?
Quarterback would be one.
I mean, if we're talking with the two thirds.
Oh,
so coming off the board, not later on. No position surprises you in the 7th. But with the 2/3, what position could possibly surprise you other than quarterback?
Maybe offensive tackle. Given
knowing that I could maybe play him inside.
Yeah, if it's an offensive tackle who can flip, then that's a different conversation.
I could say he's an OL or he's my third guy. If I can get a third offensive tackle in the 3rd round.
Yeah,
who could step up and develop. But Keith, there isn't a position other than quarterback that would surprise me in the 3rd. And even then, if Hendon Hooker's there and you took Hendon Hooker, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, no,
you need everything.
Yeah, there's not one that would, especially when you're picking that late. And the Broncos did a decent enough job with their starters going into next season. You feel comfortable with your starting 22, but you have right now what you had to, considering where you pick. But would be interesting.
Like the kicker. I don't consider specialist football players. I'm sorry.
How dare you? Long snappers have feelings.
I don't. When it comes to team building and stuff like that with draft picks, I don't even consider kickers and punters. They don't even cross my mind.
Yeah, and not round 3. Bama X, good morning to you, Bama X. DWI guys, good morning, gents.
Hey,
got our guy Jamal.
Didn't see you pop in.
Ethan's here. He's got a guy who he wants in the draft. We'll get to it. Good morning from Jamal Killings. Good to see you. Jamal has a relatively new picture there. Hope you're doing well, Jamal. Kevin Gray, morning Broncos country. Nick Scott in Broncos country. Salute. It's here. It's finally the draft. Jason Walton coming in. Good morning, guys. Can Roger Goodell walk up to the podium and announce Sean Payton as our first round pick tonight? I love that Sean Payton's like, no, we're preparing like we have a pick here. We're not going to sit there and watch Russell Wilson highlights or anything. This is business. This is work. So just
wait a minute. That was because last year they said, what are you going to do? We said, we're going to sit back and watch Russell Wilson highlights.
Yeah.
They said that last year. Oh, man. I told you he's a jerk.
Yeah. I mean, he's leaning into
hilarious,
it.
But he's your jerk. He is an arrogant ass.
Yeah.
But he's your arrogant ass, and you love him for it. Love him. Oh, man. Shots fired. He's funny.
Yeah, he's a quick one. Ethan wants Jack Campbell. That would be incredible. I bet you also are a big Drew Sanders fan as well. Jack would be amazing. I don't understand how people don't love Jack Campbell. When you go through the profiles of the top linebackers in football right now, the ones who are the more classic, second level middle linebackers. I don't want to offend Scott here. Obviously, Micah Parsons is a different breed because he's like Von Miller, who switched from Sam to edge year 2 in the NFL. Micah Parsons is an edge rusher these days. But your second level linebackers, your best ones are like Darius Leonard. I think he changed his name. It used to be Shaquille Leonard. Then you also have Fred Warner out there, Greenlaw.
It used to be Darius. Now it's Shaq.
Excuse me. Okay. I
flipped wait a minute. Now you got me going.
Levante David. I mean, all these guys, not incredible athletic testers, but like from the neck up, incredible players.
Would Brian
So
Urlacher be an edge in today's game? He was big.
he might have been tried there. He was massive.
I
He
mean, he
played
was.
safety for the Lobos.
My friend trained him, and used to tell me stories about just about his workouts and stuff. And he says he's like, you could put your hand right down in the middle of his back because his lats were so big and developed that it was like a crease right down the middle of his back, how big that he was. So Brian Urlacher, I'm wondering, I mean, he was big. He was 6'4", 260. Yes.
He'd play edge.
He's an edge in today's game. Let me see it. Combine numbers, combine measurements. He came in at 6'4", 258, 4.59 with a 4.18 shuttle and a 3.94 and a 6.94 L cone, 3-cone drill.
Somebody play
Brian Urlacher's an edge
in today's NFL.
He was Micah Parsons before Micah Parsons. He's bigger. He wouldn't quite with the same straight line speed, but Brian Urlacher is an edge in today's game.
That's crazy. I mean, you're probably right. Somebody, just the value, right? You're just so much more value if you can rush the passer. There was a conversation with Baron Browning coming out. He could play linebacker, but that body type really compares to a lot of edge rushers. And guess what? There's way more value than edge. I would even argue that your third edge rusher is more valuable than one of your two starting second level stack off ball linebackers. But I digress. We got to move on here.
Dom had 42 sacks.
Yeah.
Urlacher did. I mean, he was a monster, no doubt about it. He's Hall of Fame for a reason, but he would have been edge.
Probably. Dom, good morning to you, Dom. Hope you're doing well. Got our guy Greg Smith. Good morning. JP saying, what time does the draft start today? It's 5 p.m. for me, so it'd be 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I'm not sure exactly where you are, but that's the time for me. Dominique Martin, morning. Nick, Scott, Broncos family. Is safety Martin out of the question for us? Go Broncos. Well, Dominique, if you check out my mock draft that I posted a couple days ago, my final one, I kind of went with some guys we hadn't talked about too much, and I ended up going with Jartavius Quan Martin out of Illinois. I think it was Dane Brugler recently mentioned that he's like his deep dark horse for a first round pick. Some teams might even have Quan Martin as their first safety in the entire NFL draft. Some people think he can play boundary corner. Some people think he's a better free safety. He can play slot. His profile really matches somebody that I loved in 2022's draft in Dax Hill. Not quite as fast as Dax Hill, but his jumps were incredible. His 10-yard split, I think, was in like the 96th percentile. Not overly massive, but a versatile coverage player that we've seen Vance Joseph do pretty darn well with those kind of guys out there in Arizona recently. So I think that Quan Martin is definitely a sneaky player for you. And because he has so many avenues to the field, somebody who can be really a good weapon for you and is going to make an impact on your defense if the Broncos do take him.
Yeah, again, going back to Keith's question, I think it was, I don't think any position would surprise me. So you just have to wonder, would they be available at 67? As you're knocking on the door of 70, is that player still have a chance to be there?
Yeah, I like him. He's been going like mid to late third in most mocks. I think he's going to end up going somewhere in like 60. He's a really good player. And because he plays safety, it's devalued. You might have a chance to get him, where if he played cornerback.
Which is a point I was making, yesterday was the position will move the player down. So you can get a very talented player at a non-premium position later on in the draft because their position has moved them down the board. So if I'm looking at a guard, if I'm looking at a safety, a running back, a tight end, I can get a higher talented player later on in the draft. So, and we said at the very beginning, Nick, the weakness of this team going into the offseason, for me, the biggest weakness was right at the middle of the offensive line. The good news is centers and guards are cheap, relatively speaking. Now, you went out and spent a lot on a guard. That's okay. You didn't have to in order to get better. You just said, you know what, we're going to go get the top guy available, period.
Yeah.
Gives you a chance now to get some depth in the draft and at guard, and then maybe go out and get your center too in the draft.
Yep, absolutely. Toyin coming in. Good to see you, Toyin, across the pond. Good morning to you. Mark Schrader's in the house. Marky Mark, hope you're doing well, Mark. Hope everything's okay down there in Texas. We got Eric coming in here saying after this year we have all our picks. Not entirely. Broncos flipped their second for the Saints' third next season. Also, right now on paper, it looks like they have 2 fourths in 2024, but actually one of those fourths, I believe, will end up going to the Jets in the Jacob Martin trade. We just don't know which fourth it'll be. So they don't have all of their picks. It's not just a clean slate of 1 through 7, all Denver picks. And I'm sure that they will have a lot of there'll be picks from the 2024 class that are added and taken away in the Broncos as they kind of move around in this draft. So it'll be interesting to see what the 2024 class stacks up as the draft picks stack up as precious draft capital for 2024 after the conclusion of 2023. Keith also coming in, Keith Brugman, killing it on Facebook. Make sure if you guys like Keith, drop the thumbs up. I'm sure Keith has dropped maybe even 2 thumbs up there, saying fantastic sitting with everyone at this Broncos for Breakfast table. Happy draft day, everyone. Happy draft day to you too. Happy draft day to everybody. Happy draft day to Michaela. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. We got our guy Denver Luke coming in. Good morning. Always appreciate you coming in here and saying hello to us. We got, Rad High Studio saying I love you. I love you too. I have no idea what's going on there. But that's okay.
That was a y'all. So that was a plural.
Y'all.
We love you.
Yes.
Don't leave me out of this.
I love you. You love me. It's everybody love everybody, right? It's one of my favorite lines from Pineapple. What is it? Tropical Express. Whatever the Will Ferrell movie with the basketball players is. Peter Middleton. Good to see you, Peter. Saying, let's go Broncos. Looking forward to the draft, even if we're starting in the 3rd. We'll see. I think it's pretty good chance the Broncos are picking sometime in the 2nd round.
Really?
From what I've heard, they're going to be pretty aggressive in trying to move up a little bit. I think we talked about it weeks ago that you have 67 and 68 together. I think it's possible you see 67 plus a day 3 pick or a 2024 pick to move up. And then you see 68 used to trade down. So then you're kind of sitting there, you come out with the same draft capital in the end, but you just split those picks to recoup. So we'll see. There's been some talk of that.
And Jesse had your back with Semi-Pro. I'm like, Pineapple Express was like the stoner movie. What are you talking about?
Yes, yeah, you're right.
Basketball players.
Yes,
the druggy basketball players was Basketball Diaries.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was I got fooled on that one. I would talk about wanting to see Hoop Dreams. I was like, I want to see Hoop Dreams, but it wasn't available. This is back in the days where you actually go to a store and rent movies.
Yeah.
And it was one of my wife's friends. Oh, you should see Basketball Diaries. Well, Hoop Dreams is a documentary about 2 kids going through the process of being basketball players. Basketball Diaries was about heroin addicts. I'm like, well, this wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Good movie. And Leo was phenomenal. I said, I'll never say that kid can't act again. I mean, this is going on 30 years ago. But yeah, I got fooled on that one. So let's not mix up our stoner druggy basketball movies here. That happened to me once.
They're all the same. Basketball Diaries and Hoop Dreams couldn't be more different, says Jeremy. Jeremy's you guys need to have a movie podcast or something. Dan Wilkert.
I wanted to see Hoop Dreams. Oh, then you should see Basketball Diaries. What?
Asking about.
I wanted to see Dumb and Dumber. Oh, you'd love Pulp Fiction then. Take your kids.
That was fun. Yeah, take the kids. That'd be great. Although, Danny asking about trading Alberto Cuebanam during the draft. Do they draft tight end? Do they cut Alberto? It's very possible they cut Alberto Cuebanam. He only has 1 year of cost control left. He's an interesting player, but I think they want to be a run-oriented team. And guess what? Alberto does not do very good in the run blocking department. So if you do trade him, it's probably something like, guess what? We are trading Alberto in a 2024 7 to have a 2023 7. Like, it's really like we have more value today, and we're just kind of offloading the contract. So
here's my thought on Alberto. He wasn't well regarded coming out. You got him in the 5th round. Okay. So I don't want to say he's been underachieving because he was a 5th round pick. So you've got a 5th round pick that isn't really playing and isn't doing a whole lot. What are you going to get for him? So, he hasn't improved. Sometimes you can, if you've got him in the 3rd or a 2nd and, it just didn't work, or, I can maybe spin him for a 6th and someone else is willing to give him a chance. Think Jeff Okudah. Mm-hmm. Jeff Okudah was a number 3 overall pick who was a bust in Detroit. Falcons sent a 5th round pick. That is a great 5th round pick. Alberto was a 5th round pick and hasn't really done anything. So I'm not going to call him a bust because he was a 5th round pick. But what are you going to get for him? How are you going to get a return on that when he hasn't done anything for you? So, Dana, I like your thought on the backside of this. I think he may be a cut, but I just don't see you getting a trade of value because why would you trade for him?
Yeah.
Because it's not like anybody was in love with him 3 years ago and took him in the 2nd round or the 3rd round. You're hoping for somebody like that. There wasn't anybody. He got passed on by everybody 5 times before he got finally taken.
Yeah,
4th round, Peter. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So we'll see.
But he wasn't a high pick that you're hoping. He was a lower pick. That's why I say I'm not going to call him a bust. I'm not going to say he's underachieved, because you don't have a whole lot of expectations for that guy coming out, and he's lived up to them.
It could be something too, like Keith mentions, you package Alberto and a 6th-round pick and you move up 5 spots.
Like but that's not trading him. That's dumping him.
It is essentially dumping, but maybe there's somebody that you just get a little bit more value. Squeeze that lemon just ever so much. But we got Diamond Rattler saying, boom, let's go. Diamond Rattler with a new pick coming in. Good to see you. We got Ashton Edwards, and I'm really hoping Denver trades up for a running back like Jahmyr Gibbs. And guess what? It's time to talk about my article. I wrote 4 players the Broncos could trade up for, and my number 1 I mentioned was Jahmyr Gibbs. I wrote this article on Sunday, and since then, there has been the value for 2 running backs, 1.5 running backs taken on the over-under in Vegas has gone it's way worse value. Like Vegas is telling you that 2 running backs are going to be taken in the first round. Guess what? That's the case. The Broncos aren't trading up for Jahmyr Gibbs unless they trade Jerry Jeudy and get more value. Sorry. And I know Bam X doesn't want him I'm not sure exactly why, because he's a fun player. But Jahmyr Gibbs, it sounds like the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Bills, some of those teams in the back end of the first round that are in their Super Bowl window are being heavily linked to Jahmyr Gibbs.
Forgot another one. And that's where Daniel Jeremiah had him going.
The Eagles?
The Eagles.
Yeah, that's an interesting one as well. Yes.
Yeah, the Eagles. I keep trying. I think Jeremiah was like, I keep trying to get Bijan Robinson to the Eagles, but this is a pretty good consolation prize. And it makes sense. I can use a short term. And when we say luxury pick, again, the running back has such a short shelf life that it is a luxury pick. It's like signing a guy. It's like signing a receiver that's 29 years old. I'm hoping to get 1 contract out of him before he's done. That's a little bit like taking a running back, except the opposite. They age like Benjamin Button or something. There's got to be some sort of metaphor in there that makes sense. They're old. They're already old when they come into the league. You're just hoping to get 3-4 years out of them.
Yeah. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs is probably the best fit of any player in this draft for what the Broncos are lacking and what they could use. The Broncos they just keep getting rumored to move one of these wide receivers. They have 3 wide receivers who should be playing this season. Well, maybe Sean Payton isn't such a fan of the multi-receiver game. I mean, we kind of saw him also in the Saints the last 4 or 5 seasons where, he did use wide receivers, but he's Marquez Callaway, some of these other receivers, they were much more emphasis on the tight ends and the running backs to be a impact target players in the pass game. So using some of that wide receiver capital and targeting a running back like Gibbs, who is probably one of the better home run threats in the entire NFL, or could be one of the better home run threats in the entire NFL. He is just an explosive play waiting to happen. He's not incredible between the tackles. He's not incredible at breaking tackles, but I think he's really good with angles out there. I think he does a good job of kind of throttling his speed a tad to create those angles, kind of, cause that linebacker that's pursuing him just to pause for a second and then shoot up again up the field. Can be a player that you can flex out of the backfield. He can turn a lot of dump offs into explosive plays. So I love Gibbs. Excuse me. We'll see if he falls to even close to the range for the Broncos. Not yet. If he even falls close to the range for the Broncos, I think it's less likely by the day. But he is, I think, one of the most ideal trade-up candidates for where the Broncos are at as a team and what Sean Payton wants to do. I mean, you saw him go out there and go crazy with the run game personnel, fullback, tight ends, offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. Well, they don't have that guy out of the backfield who's an explosive wide receiver who can almost function, or explosive running back who can almost function as a wide receiver. Gibbs is the best one in this class.
Yeah, it says, Bam X says, you've been paying attention. Yeah, you've been paying attention on this. So, Nick, did you want to get into, we're at about 30 minutes here, did you want to get into more of your trade-up candidates and or mock drafts?
I want to do just a few more of the trade-up candidates. I'll keep rolling here real quick because I wanted to list these 4 guys. The next one for me was Luke Musgrave. He's kind of not played a whole bunch at Oregon State due to an injury, but he is probably he really might be the highest upside tight end in this class, which is crazy to say. But the combination of the size and the explosiveness and the fluidity out there, I know that you got some clips from him at Senior Bowl, but he looks like a man amongst boys out there at the Senior Bowl. Just how big he is and how fluid, knocking guys off. I mean, look how much he just creates space there. Sean Payton, Mike Kliss kind of didn't quote him exactly, but saying he's looking for more of a big mother trucker out there that can play inline and block. I think Musgrave at his, 6'5", 255 pounds can get there. And he's also somebody who has enough speed to stretch the seam, which we've seen with Sean Payton. He loves somebody who can play Y and then stretch the seam, or play big slot and stretch the seam. You had Ben Watson there for a number of years, who was really that kind of guy. They had Jared Cook, who could be that kind of guy out there. And they had, of course, Jimmy Graham. So you get somebody who can play in line and also stretch the seam at the same time. I think he would be an awesome fit for the Broncos. And if he falls, I wouldn't be shocked at all if they made up a move for him. Again, switching the target distribution from less running back heavy to more tight end, less wide receiver heavy to more tight end and running back. Musgrave is one who could really round out that room. So he
I love
intrigues.
the flexibility. Look how low he is in his stance right here. He's right here on the right end. He's tiny. He's 6'6". And a guy like this, I always have my bias. Big receivers are a bias of mine because they're always open. You can just throw him open. That's him and Mingo on the right side. How about some size there? You want to line up and try and hit those boys coming out? No, thank you. So I really like Luke Musgrave. Get him late second. He'd be worth a trade up for sure.
Yeah, and he's one that I think his GPS speed at the Senior Bowl would have had him as the 4th fastest wide receiver out there, and he's 6'6", 255 pounds. What? That's pretty damn incredible.
He'll be 275 by the time all's said and done. Once he gets when he's a 28-year-old grown man, he'll be 275 pounds.
Yeah. So really interesting player there. On the next one I mentioned was probably my favorite trade-up candidate. And I mentioned Gibbs as the best probably fit for what we're looking for here. But my favorite trade-up candidate in this entire draft is Steve Avila. I think he's going to end up going back into the first round. There's been a lot of Cowboy smoke there, but I adore Steve Avila. A lot of people are pegging him as a guard, but he played more games at center than guard. And he's actually one of the few guys who has the mass and the ass kicking up front that I'm looking for guard. I mean, he's 6'3", 320 pounds, didn't test exceptionally well, but that's okay for an interior offensive lineman. He's got great with his hands. He's got a great anchor. He moves well enough. I think he's scheme independent. He can play in any scheme. And I would just want to go back to the Alabama TCU game Georgia TCU game where Georgia is beating the brakes off of TCU in the 4th quarter. And Steve Avila is still out there burying guys. I mean, there's no chance. And he's out there. It'd be easy to give up. No, he's looking to still kill guys out there. So I love Steve Avila.
There's a phrase I've used before that it was taught to me, but about trusting your speed. Fast guys don't cut back. The fast guys pin their ears back and they outrun angles. This is a guy who trusts his strength. He plays so calm out there. He's like, you know what? I'm good. It's just everything he does is just easy. The more you watch him, the more you like him because once he's locked up, there's no panic in him. He's not worried about getting pushed back. He's like, I trust my strength and my base and my speed to handle this. He's really good. He is really good. And he did play a lot of guard. I didn't know much about center, but the fact that he can play center too, you're worried about getting bullied in the trenches. Everybody, take a drink. Scott said bullied in the trenches for the Denver Broncos. And it's done. It's over. Forget it. You're not moving this guy back.
I mean, getting Ben Powers.
Him and Ben Powers there with Quinn Miners. Talk about flipping the script. My goodness. Yes, please.
That would be very Bill Parcells-esque. I mean, you went from, barely pushing 300 pounds, all those guys, to now you're averaging, 330 pounds across the middle there. So I would be, and I know there's a lot of talk about John Michael Schmitz and Tippmann. I like Steve Avila significantly more than both those guys. So we'll see what happens. I mean, there's some talk that Steve Avila, if he takes Skoronski out, would be the team's number 1 interior offensive lineman in this class. It's him or Osiris Torrance. So we'll see if he falls. If he falls to like 40, I might be on the phone, which is crazy to say. Next one on my list here was, okay, so I have listed 3 already. My last one was somebody we took in the mock draft simulator who I don't think will be there, but maybe have a slight trade up if he falls. Somebody I adore, Keanu Benton. 6'3", 315 pounds, long arms, can play over the A gap, can play over the B gap. Listen, guys, the Broncos don't have a lot of plus players on the interior defensive line right now, especially in that A gap and the B gap. It's DJ Jones and then scratch your head. I know Mike Purcell was okay last season, but he's older. Maybe somebody you can move on from. He hasn't been great there. We don't know anything about Owuzurike and Matt Henningsen. Benton was one of my favorite players in the entire Big Ten the last 2 seasons. They mainly lined him up at nose tackle and made him 2-gap and play almost head up, like zero technique over the center a lot. But I think he's got a lot of upside where he's going to be unlocked with scheme, with pass rush upside, because at Wisconsin, they did a lot of slanting fronts up with their defensive front 7, and they really wanted to free up their linebackers and their edge rushers to get after the quarterback, which meant Keanu Benton had to do a lot of dirty work. I think he has a lot more potential than he showed because of the assignments that Wisconsin played him with. So got a strong player, get after the quarterback, plays. He has to work a little bit with his leverage, can sometimes pop out of his stance too quickly. But I think there's a lot of potential here, and Broncos have spent a lot of resources to get bigger and stronger on the offensive line. Maybe they use the draft to start doing that on the defensive line.
Uses his hands really well, and you're right. You see him, he comes up a little quick, but those are also in pass rush situations as we're watching this. When he anchors, holds his line there, does a good job, and then has some quickness and some effort in him where he wants to get back. Here he is going against Olu. He uses his hands as well as anybody in this draft on the inside.
You see the bench
which
press.
is pretty advanced at this level. I had Keanu Benton, did a mock draft at Keanu Benton, and all of a sudden I got some troll on me about, in the third. I'm like, wait, it gets better in the second. I'm like, dude, Daniel Jeremiah's got him going in the first. What are you talking about? That this is a stretch that he's going in the second or the third? Jeremiah's got Keanu Benton. I saw you just pop your eyebrows out, so that may have been news to you. He's got Benton going to the Bengals at 28.
Well, this is probably like I was saying. I thought he was the least likely to be taken in the first round out of all the guys that I just mentioned in this trade up article. But heck, watch all 4 of them get picked today. So there's your scouting report. If you guys are curious about any of those picks today, just play these back. But if any of these guys fall within range to the Broncos, I'm at least listening about moving up a little bit for those guys. So let's get to it. We're going to do a couple mock draft simulators here. We can do a Broncos one real quick. It's not going to take us long to do the Broncos. We got some ideas here. We did one the other day where we took Sam Laporta, and I can't even remember who else we took there, Scott.
We've done so many of them. We've taken everybody at this point. Remember, I took him in my mock. Yeah, which one of the 80 you did?
I think next year we need to be a little better with others. I know we're very comfortable with the PFF one, but just because the boards are so different, we tend to get trapped with the same players being available. That maybe go with something a little different.
The other ones I've tried. This is the best simulator, like the back end. As far as the data going in, I don't know, but as far as the process, they do the best job.
Yeah, I did a one with Eric was really trying to convince me to use the Draft Network for our mock draft simulator. I'm like, let me mess with it once, and I walked out with Mozzie Smith, who a lot of people think is going to go in the top 40, DJ Turner, who a lot of people think is going to go to the top 50. Then I went Jack Campbell in the 4th round. I went Devon Achane in the 5th round, and then I went, I think it was somebody else ridiculous in the 6th. It might have been, I don't even remember, somebody unbelievable. That's like, there's no way in hell this guy is here. So I bet this one was a little bit rough. We didn't take Laporta and
again, they mix in the public board, which is, to me, the public is looking at everybody. Yep. And they're, what a 24/7, the composite. So the public is a better composite board. So you don't necessarily get the outliers of, PFF has Tyree Wilson like 22nd. Well, that's by 10 points, 10 spots worse than anybody else.
Yep.
But we can do Broncos real quick. Care for positional value is up. Draft for needs is up. Randomness is up a little bit. And we lean on the public board because, like I said, it's more of a consensus.
Yeah.
You ready to do this thing?
Let's turn on randomness just one more, just for fun. Because it's going to be random tonight. I'm into it. There we go. That's one more would be too much. That's a good spot.
All right. Here we go. Enter the draft. This will be starting at 8 o'clock tonight. Like I said, Nick Eastern. And I will be on my channel, youtube.com/Scott Kennedy at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain for the top 10 of the draft. Please join us. We'd love to see you. And if only it was this fast to get to the Broncos pick on tonight.
Interesting. Jatavius Martin goes one pick before we're on the clock in the Falcons one, and then this one as well. So that's somebody that I took to the Broncos with the 3rd round, who I haven't heard many people mocking to Denver, but I think he'd be an awesome pick. There's Keanu Benton. Again, I mentioned how much I love him. He's one of my favorite players in the draft. I have no issue. Broncos looking to get bigger up front. They don't have good depth on the defensive line right now. The thing about defensive line is there's like a certain level of athleticism and body types that you just need to have. And I don't know if the Broncos have that right now. The off the bus kind of guys. So I think we should go with Benton here again, just because we talked about him so much.
I took him at 42 last night in a mock. I did.
He's good. Yep, he's great. So
yeah, and there's some pretty good players in there. Jatavius Martin, DJ Turner, Cedric Tillman, Joe Tippmann slides to 61. These are all trade up candidates. Steve Avila falls to 58.
If Avila was there, I'm moving up. I'm not.
There's the positional value that has been kicked up a notch because he's a guard. So we can get DL. I bet you there's some corners in there that would be gone too. So you look at running backs, tight ends, centers, they fall when we turn up positional value.
Yep.
But DL, Keanu Benton, yes, please.
Keanu Benton's good here. And then the next guy I would take, I think I'm going to lean into the defense here and say Tyreek Stevenson. We haven't taken him, I think, even one time in these mocks, but I think it was Jordan Reed's 7-round mock. He had the Broncos going with him. Stevenson's a really good man cornerback, and I think he stood out at Miami. I think he's a little bit a safer prospect than Darius Rush, more physical than Darius Rush as well. And I think a lot of people have Tyreek Stevenson going in the top 50. So here, that's a good spot for me. I feel like the cornerbacks kind of fly off the board between this spot and the next spot as well. I can probably find a running back, offensive lineman with that next spot. So finding a defensive lineman and a cornerback here, I'm fine with it.
I would want to be absolutely positive that I did not want Luke Weipler, knowing how bad I needed a center. I would have have done my due diligence and said, no, this isn't an upgrade, because if it is, this is where I'm going because I need a center. If it's not, then hey, I'm not wasting the pick.
There's also some talk about A-Chain for the Broncos here as well, but Tyreek Stevenson stands out to me for them here. I think he's a really good spot. We got Corey Trice here. We already went cornerback, though. Oh, God. I think let's go Nick Saldiveri here. I think we've taken him a bit, but he's a tackle prospect, could play guard as well, maybe even center. I know a lot of people who know more about offensive line than me love Nick Saldiveri. Think he could be a top, 70 pick. So to get him here at 108 is maybe a little bit of a steal. Somebody who stands out for me. And why no Weipler? I think Weipler is a little bit better in a outside zone scheme where you're asking him to peel off to the next level. So he's the one who stands out to me. I'm between three players here, Scott. I'm going to give it to you. Nick Saldiveri stands out for me. Tank Bigsby stands out for me. And also Roshan Johnson, who I always want to take in the 4th round. I haven't taken him a single time yet. But I am a big fan of.
I'd rather go a position over a running back right now, knowing I can get running backs. I've got 1+ for sure. If I'm sitting there with Pirine and then maybe what comes back with Javonte, that I need a third guy, and I can get a third guy later.
See, I'm curious if they're looking for a third guy or a potential one guy even. So I think
if they're looking for a one guy, they should have already taken him.
I just think there's such a gap between Gibbs and Bijan compared to the next wave. I think the next wave you take them would be this spot right here in the 4th round, unless you trade down.
I don't see this guy. I don't see a running back here as being a 1. That's kind of my point.
Yeah. I can see a 1B, but with Roshan Johnson or Tank Bigsby, but Nick Saldiveri continue to get good on the
Falcons
offensive
took
line.
Roshan.
Yep. I mean, Corey Trice is just too good here to pass up. I have no issue going that way again. 2 cornerbacks, I don't care. You need defensive back. Dorian Williams really stands out for me here as well. I like him a lot.
We almost took Corey Trice at 70, 75. To get him at 139, yeah, we'll do that.
Yep. So I have no issue with that. And he's also somebody who can play safety. So we're looking for that as well. And then, here's your running back, Israel Abanikanda. That's 6th round. That's more than fine. So let's take him. Not even think about it. I don't know what somebody, I think it was Eric, said he tested like a freak. I didn't see. I looked at the numbers again. I'm like, that's not freakish testing for the running back. But
yeah, he did it. Did he do? Here, let me look up combine results. Did he do a pro day?
Maybe.
I didn't remember his numbers being off the charts for the combine. Running back Pitt. Yeah, he didn't. He didn't test at the combine.
Well, maybe that's why. I'm looking at his
he didn't
Roth
test at the
score.
combine, but he good size, coming at 5'11", 220.
Yeah, that's solid. His unofficial times 4.39.40, which is good. Pretty good. Yeah, he actually did test pretty well with the unofficial ones because of the pro day. So grain of salt, of course. But 6th round, God bless. We'll take it.
So there you go. You got DL. We doubled up on corners. We talked about corner being maybe the position that's the shallowest right now, and you got two of them that can play, and then a running back, A+.
Yeah, this is I think this is about as good as you could possibly hope. I know that Jeremy really wanted a center here, but the board didn't fall that way, unfortunately. Maybe in reality, I think that Corey Trice falling to the 5th is silly stuff. So maybe there you're talking about a Ricky Stromberg or a Alex Forsyth if you are totally wanting a center. The thing about the centers for me is that a lot of guys who you're drafting as centers straight from the college level are centers because they're so small. And if I'm talking about 5th, 6th round, I need my bleeping offensive lineman to be versatile, to be able to play multiple spots. So it's kind of, you're in a weird spot there with the centers, mid to late day 3. But
Well, another part of it is they weren't the best offensive linemen in high school or college. That's why they're at centers.
yeah,
The best offensive linemen are tackles.
yeah,
You get moved to center because you couldn't play tackle. It's just
yeah,
kind of the way it is. And then once in a while, one of those guys takes to the position like a duck to water. His body type, his size, may have limited him from being a tackle as he was coming up. And as he moved up, you might be a 6'3" tackle in high school, and then you move inside in college. But that's a big reason why. I've said it a zillion times. 6'3", 300 guys grow on trees. As strange as that sounds to say, I know, but it does in this world. Finding one that can have the strength of a 350 pounder and the movement of a linebacker is a little tougher. That's a little tougher to find.
But this is about as good of a draft as you could hope for the Broncos. In all reality, we'll see if any of these guys fall to these ranges. Chris loves the one. Jeremy Shawn's a big Luke Weipler believer. Weipler's fine. I think 67, 68 is a little early for me. I think he's more of an 80 to 90 kind of range guy. But if you love him, then I get it. In this draft, though, the way it fell in reality, Steve Avila falls to, what was it, pick 59? Buddy, I'm moving
Centers
up.
are guards with good grades.
Yeah.
Brad says centers are cerebral guys. Centers are guards with good grades.
Yep, maybe a little bit better work ethic too. You got to figure out the coverages and stuff. But yeah, no doubt. If the draft fell this way, I'm probably moving up for Steve Avila in reality. But this is about as good as
I'll save this one for you if you want to use it.
Sure.
For anything.
And I would like to do a first round pick with the Chargers, Chiefs, and Raiders. Ernie Mays, God, please cover your eyes. I'm sorry. I apologize to you, buddy. Broncos only, but this pertains to the Broncos because they're our rivals. So we'll keep
where
it
are we
going
picking?
here.
I've got Raiders.
7. You got pick 21. And then you got pick 31.
Chiefs.
And you can just one round. We're just doing
one
for
round?
today. Just one round. We're just doing for today. It's about today.
All right. I'll leave the Broncos on there as a tease.
Doesn't matter. Yep. No picks today. Let's trade up. Let's go get Steve Avila. So we're going to be picking here for the Raiders. Raiders are absolutely horrible roster-wise. I think they're just one of the worst rosters in the NFL. This is a team that needs defense horribly. What they really need is cornerback. I am not sure if they would take Jalen Carter here, given what's gone on with Henry Ruggs. I'm not sure if they'll go quarterback either here. I think the one that stands out here for me is Christian Gonzalez. I think he's the best cornerback in the draft. Again, with the Henry Ruggs thing, with the racing and the DUI and the lady and her dog, the fatality with that Henry Ruggs thing, it's maybe a little too
fresh, huh?
Yeah, and also getting Jalen Carter out there in Vegas with a team that's really lacking a lot of veteran leadership. It seems like a scary situation. Josh McDaniels too. If he goes there,
that's not a situation. If I'm Mr. Jalen Carter or his agent, I don't want him with the Raiders.
Yeah, it just does not seem like a great fit for me.
I'd like him in like Green Bay. I want you somewhere boring.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm leaning Christian Gonzalez here for them. They have horrible boundary cornerbacks. I just want to get into the Raiders depth chart here real quick. I know we're running long today, but it's the day of the draft, right? So the Raiders cornerback depth on the boundary. They have Nate Hobbs at slot, who is fine. I think he's a little bit overrated, but good. But they're boundary cornerbacks right now. David Long Jr., Amik Robertson, Duke Shelley, Brandon Facyon. I mean, this is one of the worst cornerback rooms in the entire NFL. So I think they're a position, and maybe feel bad for you, Scott, because I know you are hoping for cornerbacks to fall as well. But it seems like the Raiders almost might be, we have to take cornerback here. So
no, that's okay. I would be talking about the support system in Atlanta would be a better situation for Jalen Carter. Now you talk about getting out and getting a fresh start, but Atlanta's got their interior line now is Grady Jarrett, a man of the year candidate, Calais Campbell. Nobody speaks anything but positive about him. David Onyemata, and then you've got some young guys there too that, so he's not feeling like completely left out. It's like, hey, you guys want to go get some dinner? And no, I got to go home to my kids, where you're feeling like the outcast either. So I think Carter to Atlanta might be the best place for him, at least on the surface.
Yeah.
But
You get
we'll
Tyree
see.
Wilson there too.
Yeah, and
Um,
I could take Tyree Wilson again. This is a good situation for the bottom 10 when Bryce Young, Will Levis, and CJ Stroud go 3 of the top 4. Now, Anthony Richardson goes to the Patriots. Very interesting.
that would be interesting, without a doubt. So we're on the board now with the Chargers. Chargers could go with Bijan Robinson here. He does stand out for me of trying to really maximize the window of you have with Justin Herbert. I mean, that's a team who is a win now situation. So I think we mocked when we did a full round, first round mock a week ago. Scott, did we mock Bijan Robinson to the Chargers?
I don't think so. I don't remember for sure.
Okay, I thought we did. The other positions here that really stand out for me for the Chargers, they have questions at right tackle. Trey Pipkins is gone. Maybe you take a Darnell Wright. He stands out
Doesn't
for
it seem
me.
like the Chargers could always use help on the D line?
Defensive line as well as a spot. I don't know. I don't love Khalil. Can't see. The next one who stands out for me is Deontay Banks. Yep. So I'm between Darnell Wright, Bijan Robinson, and we just said Deontay Banks.
Yeah, I'd be okay with Deontay Banks here. That leaves the Rave. I'd be curious to see what the Ravens would do next. Kalaja Kancey has tested really well. They took a
Tiny.
safety last year, and they might just, it'd be a very Ravens thing for them to take the best player in the draft.
Pair Bijan with Lamar would be fun. I'm going to leave it up to you, Scott. I think any of the picks of Bijan, Deontay Banks, and Darnell Wright make a lot of sense. I think because of where the Chargers are at, I would probably push you a little bit more towards the offense, because if you have a running back like Herbert who's yet to get paid, I would want to make him happy and give him everything he possibly needs. So I'd maybe lean a little bit more on the offense. But either of those picks would be good for me.
Yeah, you watch them a lot more closely than I do. So that's fine. I would again. How are you going to go wrong here with Bijan Robinson in the 20s?
In the 20s, that's fine. Also, you have Austin Eckler, who's demanded a trade as well.
Right.
So really interesting here. We're on the clock now with the Chiefs. The Chiefs are trying to run power scheme kind of stuff here. You got Jahmyr Gibbs, who'd be really interesting for them. Mozzie Smith would be interesting for them. Zay
Daniel
Flowers.
Jeremiah has Zay Flowers going 11.
Wow. I mean, he's so small, but he'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so was Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill was yoked
I know,
up,
but
though.
you're not really worried. They got Sky Moore last year. Did they have could they use another weapon, or do they need to start rebuilding offensive line? They just spent a ton of money on Jawan Taylor. But you got your choice of some pretty good offensive linemen here. You could get your running back here too, because they've got who do they have? The one that sounds Eastern European. 7th rounder last year. Speedy guy, Podolski or something.
Pacheco.
Yeah, that guy. Sounds like a hockey player.
Yeah, he'd be really interesting. He's a good player. They're still looking for guys. The ones who stand out here for me, for them at this spot, we mentioned DeJuan Jones. They have been a team that's really leaned hard into the offensive line. Anton Harrison makes a lot of sense as well. One of the younger players in the draft. Will McDonald makes a lot of sense. Felix Anduke Azuma makes some sense. And Jahmyr Gibbs. I think where I'm leaning right now, I would probably go Anton Harrison. He's extremely young. I think he's got good grip strength. This seems like a team that's Andy Reid has embraced the offensive line building around Patrick Mahomes versus the weaponry. I think they can scheme open weapons, but you can't scheme protection and big bodies up front. So I think best offensive lineman available here for me would be Anton Harrison.
I'd be real interested in seeing Darnell Washington with Patrick Mahomes. But yeah, offensive line again. They spent a ton of money there, but that was left tackle, and then Andrew Wiley, I think, is who they're scheduled to have right tackle. Or he signed somewhere else finally.
He signed with the Commanders.
Okay, yeah. So building the trenches.
The Chiefs' current right tackle listed, so they paid DeJuan Jones, but he's supposed to play left tackle for them, given what they paid him. Their current right tackle is oft injured, a late 3rd round pick from TCU, Lucas Niang, who probably better as a swing tackle than a starter. So I think offensive line makes a lot of sense there. Their number 1 mocked player to the Chiefs so far this season has been Anton Harrison, followed by DeJuan Jones. So I think those are ones that make some sense.
Cody asks, welcome in, Cody, says, what would a good trade package be for the 68th pick if you were to trade down?
Well, you know me, Scott. I always like to grab future draft capital, especially because the Broncos are potentially looking for a quarterback next year. Also, they might be looking at edge rusher. They might be looking at offensive tackle, some premium positions that cost premium selections to get. So from 68 trading down, I'd be hoping for like pick 95, maybe 100, something like that, and then a 2024 second round pick, and maybe we can even send them a 2024 fifth with that as well. So you move down about 30 spots there, but you get a second round pick, a potential top 50 pick in 2024. I don't think this is going to be a great draft where you want to just totally have 10,000 day 3 picks. I don't think it's very good down there.
Yeah, the sweet spot, man, from 40 to 55, there's like 6 or 7 players. I'm like, oh, I want that guy. Oh, I want that guy. Oh, I want that guy. The second round looks really, really good this year. To try and sneak up into the second round might be the way to go.
String guy 20 to 60.
What's your prediction of Atlantis for the first round pick? The player they've been linked to that I least want for the Atlanta Falcons is running back Bijan Robinson. So it'll be running back Bijan Robinson.
It might be. I wouldn't be shocked at all, though, if it's an offensive line. Isn't Terry Fontenot former offensive line? Arthur Smith, former offensive line?
It's Arthur Smith was a lineman.
Okay.
He was like a walk-on trenches guy. And, they're building an identity for that team, which is power running. But, who runs the ball? The running back.
Yeah. No. So I think Atlanta wants to trade down. It depends on how the board falls, but there's a lot of trade down talk. It was
I'd love for them to trade down at 8, move down 4 or 5 spots, and then if you want to take Bijan, fine, and get another second round pick and grab Ade or Keanu Benton or Jonathan Mingo or 2 of those guys.
Tight end also would be interesting there for that. I mean, you could really stack some players there. Who is it? Josh Kendall? Is that the name? You probably know him down there.
Yeah, I know him. He's the Athletic. He was former Columbus Dispatch and all kinds of different things. Gwinnett Daily News. He's been around here for Athens Banner Herald. I think Josh has been around a long time.
He did the mock draft for the top 10 for the Athletic, and the board fell, unfortunately, for him. And he ended up going with Peter Skronsky. But
I did the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, we did a group. A podcast group, Fans First Sports Network. If you notice, we can get into that later, but we did one too, and that's how the board fell to me, and I took Skronsky. I'm like, I can't trade down. Get a plug-and-play left guard, maybe the best offensive lineman in the draft. That's who has tackle potential down the road. It makes sense. Yep. But trade down, for God's sakes, trade down.
Well, he mentioned multiple times that Atlanta, if it plays out like this, where the cornerbacks and the 3 interior defensive linemen are gone, Atlanta wants to trade down, and that to me says Bijan Robinson. Facebook user coming in saying, do you see Sutton get traded? We talked about it at the top of the show. I put it at 20% chance that one of Sutton or Judy get traded. Certainly the Broncos seem like they are still looking for avenues to add more picks. And the ones that we hear about mostly have been Sutton and Judy. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you smaller level players traded. Maybe even some of the guys from last year's draft class at the top being floated around in some trade speculation as well. But could be possible.
String guy asks again about Anthony Richardson. You don't think Atlanta would take Anthony Richardson as a developmental quarterback? It's possible, but I don't think so. They're pretty happy right now, at least on the surface, with going with Desmond Ridder, who is a 4-5 guy running. He runs a lot better than you think. Good passer. Was 2-2 last year as a starter, and improved every week. That I think they're interested in building the team to make it as quarterback non-dependent on the quarterback as possible. I kind of call it the San Francisco 49ers method. Let's build a team that's so strong that I can plug and play a quarterback into a system, and then I don't need a $50 million quarterback. Anthony Richardson would be an intriguing pick, though, for sure. You could find ways to use a 6'5", 245-pound 4-4 guy who jumps through the roof. Now, I might want to light him up in the slot opposite Kyle Pitts and use him that way, but that's a different story. So I don't think so. The national media seems to just really despise Desmond Ridder. So if you're not paying attention to anybody local with the Falcons, they don't have a quarterback. Everybody local says, hey, they're going to roll with Ridder, and we're okay with that.
You know me. I keep saying that if you have any questions at all about him and you like one of these guys, then take the shot. Because if you don't have a quarterback,
I don't like any of those guys enough at 8 to say, that's do that. I'd rather go in a different direction.
And if I was in charge, I'd probably be intrigued enough by Anthony Richardson to make the call there. But it would be with a lot more information than I have right now.
Right.
I would know everything about the dude, what makes him tick, his intelligence, his desire. I mean, you got to be like almost a psychopath level competitor to be a elite great quarterback in the NFL. You know, one of my favorite stories, Broncos country knows this, but John Elway used to have the quarterbacks over to play pool at his house when he was the quarterback there, and he won every time. And one time he lost. You know what he did? He sold that pool table and got a new one because that one had the scourge of losing to it. And that's just like, that's insane. But that's kind of, they have to be wired that way to be an elite quarterback, which is maybe unfortunate, maybe a little bit of a crazy folks, but that's kind of what you want for the quarterback. Daniel Swofford, could Bowles or Hamler be ones traded this week? Thin at offensive line, but a trade for Bowles, higher draft capital. I think you're probably a year early on Bowles. There had been some talk about it, but I think the Broncos are going to roll with him at this point. Next season, though, very interesting to follow Garrett Bowles there. I think especially because the Broncos want to get bigger and stronger along the offensive line. Bowles is a little bit small for that left tackle spot. I think he measured at the combine like 297. He's got adequate arm length, but he's more of a zone guy. I think they maybe want a little bit more mass there.
And Daniel, this year you'd get about an $8 million savings. Maybe it's 10 at left tackle if you were to move on from Bowles to save a little more. I don't like the idea of splitting across 2 years. That's just, you take your medicine. If you're going to do it, take your medicine. But then you're going to have to pay a guy to play that position. So your savings your 8 to $10 million savings, half of that would go to the guy that you need to replace him. And there's no guarantee that he's going to be any better. So what could you get for him in a trade? The first round pick is going to be $5 million if you had a first round pick, and then you would need somebody to play that position. So you're not really saving any money. So you got to ask, what would I get and would it be worth it? Or am I better off riding him out a year? And I think the answer is the same. And for me, that's the same with Sutton. I've said it a zillion times. Financially, it doesn't make sense to move on from these guys just yet.
Yep. And Ethan closing us out here now that we're at over an hour. Happy draft day. Enjoy. Great show, everyone. And we'll see you tonight on Scott's channel for the first 10 picks when the draft goes live today. Happy first round. A lot of the speculation is going to come to an end. Make sure you tune in tonight to hang out with us. Also, Scott and I are going to be live again tomorrow morning over on the Falcons channel as well to discuss the top 10 and just first round thoughts in general. So if you guys want to join us, better for you to join us in the morning rather than live at the draft, we'll be doing that as well. So any final thoughts, any final ads you want to get in before we get out of here?
No, if you, for some reason you don't know where to find me, I just dropped a link in the chat. This is where you can find us tonight at 8:00. And then the Mile High Huddle crew will also be here at 8:00 Eastern. That's when the draft starts. I would imagine the first pick goes on the clock about 8:10, 8:15. But we'll be here all night. Mile High Huddle will be here for the entire draft live during all 7 rounds.
Yep. Going to be great. Really fun. Excited to see it. We'll see you guys tonight, but make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod and at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says here underneath, please subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. Click that bell icon so that way you get the notification when we go live. Again, we're going live early and often these days. Always a lot of fun. We got Michael coming in, closing us out with some stars here, saying, great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em. You guys, big buck you too, man. Big stars from Michael. That deserves an all caps buck you. So appreciate that. Hope you're doing well, Michael. Excited to see. And Peter, coming in saying, ooh, big stars. Love it so much. So thank you guys. We'll see you tonight. It's draft day is officially here. It's a little less, I guess I have a little bit less nerves about it. Typically I like butterflies in my stomach this day, but the Broncos, no picks until 67, 68 currently. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the process. So
I don't particularly care. So I'm interested in the chaos. That's what's exciting to me is what everybody's going to do. Again, I kind of root for the saying, I root for the names on the back of the uniforms more than the names on the front of the uniform. So when we talk about these guys, I like this guy, I like this guy, I like this guy. I want them to do well. That's who I'm rooting for.
Mm-hmm. Yep. A lot of fun. Excited to see what happens today, and we'll see you guys tonight. But until then, make sure you continue to choose kindness and compassion. As I always like to say, go Broncos.